To me, my youth in Mercedes was a pleasant memory, because although I went to a segregated schools and I did not know exactly the reasons or the cause of segregation. In fact, I didn't even know that any of our constitutional rights were being violated.
My father grew up in a time when discrimination was commonplace. He experienced this firsthand in the U.S. Army.
Dr. Garcia was a medical doctor in the Midwest when World War II began, and immediately enlisted, thinking he would be in the medical corps. Instead, he was assigned to an infantry unit. He landed in North Africa when the troops first landed as an infantry platoon leader. Infantry, that's in the front lines, as a platoon leader. And he did his job well, because that's the type of man he was. Here's a medical doctor, because of the discrimination at that time, assigned to infantry. Later on, during the invasion of Sicily, they realized that he was an educated soldier, so they moved him back into the combat engineer, still not respecting he was a medical doctor. So he landed in Sicily as a combat engineer. Then as the war continued, they realized their casualties were pretty high, that there was a doctor in the combat engineers, and then he finally was assigned to the medical corps. That tells you that he understood discrimination for veterans and for military. And then once he became a medical doctor in the service, he continued, of course, that's where he had been trained. And when he came back, of course, the story I heard was that veterans would come to him to see him in his medical office. And the conversation began like, I have a little pain here on my right side, but really, we're having trouble with housing. Dr. Garcia, I have a little pain here on my right leg, but really, we're having trouble finding employment, and I'm a veteran. And I think that's what initiated before 1948 to organize and found the GI Forum, which became an advocate for veterans' rights and civil rights by Dr. Hector P. Garcia.
Basically, it was organized to help the veterans with two problems. One problem being the fact that they were not giving us veterans hospitalization, so we got organized for that. Secondly, we got organized because the educational level of our people was so low, we were not productive. So we were already working on those two things, better education for the veterans and hospitalization for the veterans.
Many of the programs and initiatives he started didn't go over too well at the time with the powers that be. And then there were the threats.
One of the things that Dr. Hector did was that when he was going ahead and going to different communities in South Texas, trying to create other chapters of the American GI Forum, is that he did it at great personal risk. There were local officials that didn't like the idea of him coming to their town and trying to go ahead and present this. One time, my father got to ride Dr. Hector's Cadillac because Dr. Hector had to hide in the trunk of his own car to get out of a town here in South Texas. That's the kind of dangers that Dr. Hector had to face trying to go ahead and create the American GI Forum.
Another amazing fact was that my father knew how to get things accomplished before there was instant communication, computers, and social media. Back then, he just knew how to reach out and touch someone.
During my friendship with Dr. Garcia, I was honored to witness him making 3 phone calls that left a great impression on me of the influence and the power that he maintained with his humble attitude and yet strong leadership. I saw him once make a phone. I walked into his office, he was on the phone, and he waved me in. And he's talking to a political presidential candidate that doesn't want to come to Corpus. And he tells him, if you don't come to Corpus, you're not going to win. That person did not win that year. Another very impressive phone call was in 1988 at the National Convention GI Forum here in Corpus Christi. I remember that when Lloyd Benson came to hear the band, Dr. Garcia said, Lloyd Benson likes to talk to the band. So he went through his talk. And then when he said, y'all be invited to march in the parade when we win. And Dr. Garcia winked at me. I said, well, that's okay. On Saturday, we play for the veterans luncheon, the military luncheon, which the guest speaker was the first Hispanic Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Hidalgo. And he brings George Bush, was the speaker at that time running for president, and he comes over and says, the Veterans Band will be invited to march in the parade. And Dr. Garcia winks at me again. And I said, what he was doing, he had gotten both parties to invite us, and so either one would win, we would get to go. Well, the election was over in November of 1988, and no invitation. On December 20 was the last day of school, and I, as a school administrator, was done for Christmas vacation. I went to his office and said, Dr. Che, we have not received the invitation, and we only have 30 days till the inauguration on January 20. He goes to the phone, and what impresses me was that he did not look up the number. He just dialed directly. I had no idea who he was calling, and the person that answered the phone was the chief of staff at the White House. At that time, the governor of New Hampshire, Sununu, had become his chief of staff, and he answered the phone. Dr. Garcia talked to him, and Mr. Sununu told him, tell the Veterans Band to wait 15 minutes. Don't say anything, and the invitation will be there. And a little bit over, about 16, 17 minutes later, I get a phone call at home from the media that we've been invited to the inauguration. It only took 17 minutes, more or less, from the time Dr. Garcia dials the number, calls the White House, and the invitation was made public. And here we go, 30 days later, we're in Washington, D.C. at the inauguration, and it was Dr. Garcia. The third phone call, we were having trouble booking flights. It was a nightmare trying to book different flights, different days, different numbers of people. So I finally decided that we needed to charter a plane. So I talked to Dr. Garcia. He said, what do we need to do? I said, well, we need to get one of, they won't give me an answer. They won't talk to me. They won't. So he said, come on. So he picks up the phone, makes an appointment with Mr. Hall, in charge of Continental at that time. We jump in the car, we drive to the airport. Mr. Hall was waiting for him because Dr. Garcia had called. And he met with us, and I told him, he said, I need a check to deposit. I thought we were just going to make arrangements. And I said, we don't have the funds. And Dr. Garcia said, they will have the funds on Monday. It was a Thursday. And he said, well, if Dr. Garcia says that, then I will call him, just bring me a check for $50,000 deposit, and all I have to do is call Houston and tell him I have a check. But it'll be good on Monday because Dr. Garcia just said so. That's the impression and the respect he had in this community. And of course, the check was good on the following Monday. And the rest is history. We left for Washington that Thursday was Monday, and then Thursday we flew in a private charter airplane through the help of Dr. Garcia. Those three phone calls left an impression on me that if you believe like Dr. Garcia and you know how to speak on the phone, you can get results.
Here is yet another story that shows my father's commitment to our veterans.
He had a passion to meet everyone that came from Vietnam at the airport. And you know, one of the things that you see now, he actually was the originator. Back in 1966, before I went to Vietnam, he would go to the airport and meet the bodies. He started coming in 1966. We had a few come in. A lot of them from all surrounding area landed at Corpus Christi International Airport. Dr. Garcia was there, and he would have the GI form with flags along the entrance of the airport. In the month of May 1968, he was there every day. If you look at the dates, there was a body arriving from the coastal bend every day, and Dr. Garcia met every one of them. And that was Dr. Garcia. And to see that gave us the respect and the following our leader, Dr. Garcia. That's one of the reasons many of us would follow him, because he was truly dedicated to the veterans and to the military. And that's a true leader. Those are the things I saw as a young man that impressed on me about Dr. Hector P. Garcia. And today I speak to that because that's his legacy. And his legacy must live, and our young people must learn that.
He really cared about veterans because he saw all the injustices that they had to face. And one of the things also that happened with him was that he never turned a veteran down. If a veteran called him at any hour of the day, any issue, have it be a housing issue, financial issue, medical issue, whatever the case was, Dr. Hector didn't turn his back on anybody.
I started in Vietnam in 1968. Then I got wounded in September 22nd, 1968. My parents were notified by telegram that I was wounded. Not knowing how bad it was, they didn't know who to contact. So they called Dr. Hector P. Garcia. Dr. Hector P. Garcia contacted Washington, D.C. to find out how bad I was wounded because my parents were worried. After Dr. Hector P. Garcia found out how serious my wounds were, he contacted my parents. With this information, it made my parents feel a lot better, knowing that I was going to be okay. We owe Dr. Hector P. Garcia our gratitude from myself and my parents, especially my mom.
Here are some final thoughts.
I appreciate everything Hector P. Garcia did, especially when forming the GI Forum to help the GIs coming back from World War II. They weren't fairly treated. And he continued doing that work for the people from Korea and Vietnam. And I appreciate everything he did for those.
He wanted to secure greater justice for Hispanic people.
The American GI Forum methodically set out to overcome all of this illegal discrimination against us, and we have succeeded very, very, very far. My faith in the system is still pretty strong, pretty good. What had happened in the past, that we didn't know the Constitution. I have never tried to avoid the fact that duty is duty, and people ask me, why do you do these things? Because I think they have to be done.
With your help, Dr. Hector P. Garcia's foundation can continue to do the good work that it did in his lifetime, because the people who are inspired by his example can keep alive the projects that he started and the work that he started.
We need to keep Dr. Hector's legacy alive for the simple fact that we need leaders of his type to keep on going. We need young people to go ahead and fill his shoes if they can, or at least try. That's what we need.
And all we have asked for so many years, we have never wanted a separate state, separate country, separate school, but we wanted to be part and parcel of the greatness of this country, the United States of America.
On behalf of the Dr. Hector P. Garcia Memorial Foundation, we appreciate your support and thank you for helping us keep Dr. Hector's legacy alive.